Hi, friends. Welcome to La Fama Bleu. Thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe. I actually did a whole video before, and the sound was off. I couldn't hear myself at all. So here I am doing a whole entire new video. Okay, so this might not be as long, but I do want to, excuse me, at least not be so absent for so long because the entire summer pretty much went by and I didn't get a chance to videotape at all, to post anything. So, all right, here we are now. We did the 2 weeks away from home in June and 2 weeks away from home in July, where my son had to spend time with his father. And so, a quick up to date um, detail in terms of what's going on now. He's, I don't know, he's very resentful. He has not been talking with his father since we got back. He says he doesn't want to take the calls, even when I, excuse me, even when I dial the number for him to speak with his father. He doesn't say anything. So the other day I had to send a text to his dad and say, hey, he does not want to come to the phone. He doesn't want to have a conversation. I'm not sure why. So, of course, I knew what was going to happen. So, shortly after, his father sent me a long email telling me of all the things that went wrong during the summer and his concerns for my son's mental state. Typical. So, there were things that he mentioned that I had noticed before, and before we left to go, before we traveled during the summer, my plan was to actually um, take my son to see a counselor, and I've been saying it for a while. Not only not because he's uh, demonstrating certain behaviors that I feel that are a little bit off, but because going through a divorce is no picnic. You may not think the children are being impacted. Yes, they are. They don't want to go back and forth from one home to another. They want one set of parents in a home where there's a sense of stability. That's all they want. Love. They want to feel loved. They want safety. And when that's taken away, it does impact them mentally, physically. So a lot of times when he's rebelling, I get it. I get it. I can't undo where we are today, but definitely I want to make sure that I get the support that he needs so that he can grow up to be whole. I don't want him to feel broken just because the situation seems that way. So anyway, that's pretty much the summary, a quick summary of our summer. So it's been challenging to wake him up in the morning for school. He's been adamant about not waking up. He screams. He says he does not want to go to school. Why does he have to wake up early? I mean, it seems extreme this time. Last year was a bit better. The first year he started going to school, that was a little bit challenging, but last year was much better. There were days where he would just get up. brush his teeth, get himself ready, and then he'll say, I wanted to surprise you, Mommy. Yep, I love that, buddy. But yeah, this year has been a challenge. It's only been a couple of weeks, but a couple of weeks of trying to drag him out of bed seems longer, honestly. So today I was able to get a counseling session scheduled. So I'm thankful for that because they were able to squeeze me in, or at least schedule me as soon as they could. Kind of wish I had scheduled it for a later appointment, but you know, God has really been speaking to me to find a home church, and I'm just praying about it. I'm gonna start visiting and pray that God leads me to a church that's encouraging, where I can call it home. I know it might not happen right away, or maybe it could. Who knows? I don't want to limit the possibility. I don't want to put that out there. But we definitely need to find a home church. I think my son needs it. He needs to see other children. He needs to see their behavior, especially, you know, as I try to teach him the fruit of the Spirit, you know, for him to be loving and patient and control his behavior, his anger. I need God in this. I can't do this by myself. And his father has not been a good example. He complains about the majority of the time that he was out there. He spent a lot of hours on tablets, where, you know, they just gave him a piece of electronic and he just sat there all day and played. You know, there were days where constantly, actually, my ex was at work, so he ended up spending the time with his new wife. And my son didn't like that because ultimately he wants to bond with his father. You know, he wants to bond with him. He wants to spend time with him, not spend time with the wife. You know, someone he doesn't even know, someone he considers to be a stranger. So that is that. So I am going to wrap this up, you guys. I'll fill you in next time. Don't forget to subscribe. In the previous video that I taped, unfortunately, that I'm not going to post, I was sharing about Megan Wood, who was married to Devin Franklin, I believe was his name. I don't remember. But anyway, she said that it was a shock when she found out that her ex-husband had filed for divorce because it had been 10 years since they had been married, and she didn't want to experience what her parents had experienced because they divorced within their 10th year as well. And you know, she probably would have stayed like I would have. You know, sometimes we suffocate ourselves throughout the marriage because we want to fight for it, and that's not always good. But at the end of the day, I always feel hopeful, and maybe that would have been the outcome for Megan as well. You know, you fight, and at some point the person makes a change, a good change, to want to fight and demonstrate that they want to be in the marriage as well, but not take the first exit. You know, divorce is not the answer. if you think it is, it's not. Maybe it is the answer if you have no children and you don't care, but you know what? Once you're tied with this person, you're forever tied. Yes, you can have a second relationship. You know, you feel this is your soulmate the second time around. I don't know if that's really true. And you know, when I follow the scriptures it does say that you can't remarry until the person dies. And I can see that because it's almost as if you no longer have that connection because the person is no longer living. Some people don't believe that. They believe that if the relationship doesn't work, you can move on to the next person. It's not that easy. Once you're emotionally connected to that person, you're emotionally connected. Period. You can't erase it with someone else. Remarrying is not the answer. Divorce is not the answer. If there's physical abuse, yes, I get it. Yeah, run for your life. But if it's something that can be worked out, differences, selfishness, compromising, divorce is not the first option. It's not intended to be. It will never be the first option. We use it like we use anything else, as if we're using a Kleenex, unfortunately, because the divorce rate is pretty significantly high. But it's not the first option. Counseling, doing things together, try to rekindle what brought you guys together. What was it? That first conversation, that first hello, grabbing that cup of tea together, going for walks. Rekindle. That's the first option. Try to rekindle. All right, you guys. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening to La Femme en Bleu. Until next time, please don't forget to subscribe.